realized that this was a new contribution to the field of usul tafsir. It took me 30-something years, 40 years to recognize it. I've now finally recognized. He said sometimes you cannot understand a verse of the Quran unless you grasp the totality of the subject. That which binds everything together, or what he called a system of meaning. And only when you grasp the totality of the subject will you be able to understand what a isolated verse is saying. The Quran itself tells us that there are verses in the Quran that are plain and straightforward, muhkamat. And there are other verses which are not. And those in whose heart is a disease who want to create fitna, they gave all kinds of sundry explanations for those verses. Fishing to create conflict. Whereas only Allah knows the meaning. But the verse goes on to say, وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ, and those who are deeply grounded in knowledge. Now, there could not be so many verses in the Quran that only Allah knows the meaning, because what's the use of sending down verses in the Quran that only Allah knows the meaning, nobody else? This makes sense. So what the Quran is saying is that Allah knows the meaning, and in addition, those who are firmly grounded in knowledge, they also know the meaning. That makes sense. And those who are firmly grounded in knowledge, they are able to understand it because they say the totality, everything is from Allah. Since everything is from Allah, here is an usul of tafsir, that you have to understand the totality before you can understand these verses with ambiguous meanings. And that's the methodology that my teacher gave to me. Look for the totality, and sometimes you cannot get the totality by only looking at the Quranic revelation. You have to go to revelation before the Quran as well to get the whole picture. Is that methodology we're going to use tonight? To look at the strategic significance of the fast of Ramadan. Fasting is an institution that is common to all religions. All through history, people have fasted. And the whole Quran came down in the month of Ramadan. We just had that verse. And the whole Quran came down on the night of Qadr, the night of power, in the month of Ramadan. And in that Quran which came down to the night of power, to the lowest sama ad-dunya, you know that between this world and the arsh, the command center from where Allah controls the world, that there are 7 worlds of space and time. We dealt with this in the last lecture. 7 different worlds of space and time, 7 different strata. So the Quran came down to the lowest one. And from the lowest strata, not lowest heaven, lowest sama, it now comes down piecemeal. The angel Gabriel brings it down piecemeal, instructed by Allah, to the heart of the Prophet ﷺ, who then recites it and is then recorded. And the institution of fasting is there in the Quran. But for 13 years in Mecca, revelation is coming down. It started with, read, Iqra, read in the name of your Lord who created you from that which you would not know for 1400 years until medical science penetrates al-alaq. A clot of congealed blood that clings to the wall of the womb. Al-Alam, embryology. 1400 years ago, this is the first revelation. And then revelation kept on coming down. But for 13 years in Mecca, the institution of fasting does not come down. The fast of Ramadan does not come down. And we ask the question, why? The divine wisdom is at work. The Jews are fasting. The Christians are fasting. The Buddhists are fasting. The Hindus are fasting. But Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam and his small group of Muslims are not fasting in accordance with this law which is to come down, the fast of Ramadan. The divine wisdom is at work. And what we want to know is why he did not send it down for 13 years in Mecca. What is he waiting for? It must be something of great importance. And then we made the migration, hijrah, to Medina. War on Islam in Mecca, so we had to flee. And now we're in Medina, and we have freedom that we did not have in Mecca. Maybe now he will send down the revelation that fasting is now prescribed for you, as it was prescribed for all those who came before you. And so when the month of Ramadan comes, you must fast. But no, even when we arrive in Medina, the revelation does not come down. Why? Instead, something strange happens. When we arrived in Medina, we now pray again in the direction of Jerusalem, but now with our backs turned to the Kaaba in Mecca. No Arab in history ever turned his back to the Kaaba, the house of Allah built by Father Abraham. How could you turn your back to the Kaaba? There's a very large and influential community of Jews in Medina, la crème de la crème of the ulama. What are you doing in Medina? And then they say, well, we are here because we expect great things to happen here. We know there's a prophet coming here. That's why we're here. When we arrive in Medina, not only do we turn in the direction in which they are turning for prayer, Jerusalem, the masjid or the temple built by Solomon alayhi salam, and therefore turn our backs to the Kaaba in Mecca. And that's news for the Jews. This is really extraordinary. There must be something in this new religion that we've got to look at, because look, they're turning in the direction of our Qibla. But in addition to that, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam fasted with the Jews on the days when they fasted, and in accordance with the law of fasting which is in the Torah, which is still there in the Torah to this day, although it's not